Hello viewers, welcome to Economics Academy. Today, as part of the concept of the day, we are going to discuss about the concept of Council of Ministers and Cabinet. So what is the recent context? So in Maharashtra, we have seen there is a cabinet expansion proposed. So in this context, let us understand what is the difference between Council of Ministers and the term cabinet. So what are the constitutional provisions related to them, and what are the main important features which distinguish the cabinet from the Council of Ministers, and many other things related to this topic will be discussed in this video. So first, let us understand. So the recent context is Maharashtra cabinet expansion. So in this context, let us understand further about the Council of Ministers. So first, let us understand who will be composing the Council of Ministers, right? So first, if you see, there is a mention in the Article 74 of Indian Constitution that there shall be Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister to aid and advise the President of India. So that's a mention of Article 74. That means Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister will be aiding and advising the President of India in the policy making, because the real executive is the Prime Minister along with the Council of Ministers, whereas the nominal executive is the President, right? So generally, first let us understand who will be the Council of Ministers. So if you see, generally the Council of Ministers is a large term which includes the cabinet ministers, minister of charge, and independent charge also, right? Let us understand. If you consider cabinet, this is a small group, okay? So who are holding the most important departments and portfolios in the government will only form part of the cabinet, right? So then apart from them, there also will be MOS. So MOS are those persons who are part of Council of Ministers but not cabinet rank. They will be assisting. That means these persons are considered as ministers in training. In future, they are elevated to cabinet rank, right? So MOS are the persons who generally assist the cabinet ministers. So for one cabinet ministry, there can be 2 or more MOS also. Then there also will be sometimes independent charge ministers also, right? So independent charge means without cabinet rank, the complete minister without MOS will be there. So this is what generally the composition of Council of Ministers. That means the cabinet, MOS and independent charge all together form part of Council of Ministers. And the mention of the Council of Ministers is in Article 74 of Indian Constitution. Then what about the term cabinet? Right? So it is very small part of the Council of Ministers, but their mention was only after 44th Amendment in 1978 added a term to Article 352 of Indian Constitution. So what is the relevance here? So we have already seen in 1975-76 period, there is internal emergency imposed in India, right? So at that point of time, the Prime Minister has advised the President of India to impose national emergency without consulting her own cabinet. So after 44th Constitutional Amendment 1978, it is clearly mentioned that in Article 352, only on the written advice of the cabinet, President can impose national emergency or the proclamation of emergency in India. So that means for the first time, the term cabinet was mentioned through 44th Amendment in Article 352. Till then, there was no mention about the term cabinet. Only term that was mentioned is Council of Ministers. Let us understand, right? So then, what are the constitutional provisions? So first, as we have seen, Article 74 mentions there shall be Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister to aid and advise the President of India. Then Article 75 says President of India will appoint the Council of Ministers and the Prime Minister. Generally, first Prime Minister will be appointed, who is the leader of the majority party in the Lok Sabha, the same time after his choice. Okay, so he will finalize who will be his cabinet. Then the Prime Minister, on the recommendations, President will generally appoint the cabinet ministers along with the Council of Ministers. So this is what mentioned in Article 75. And they also hold collective responsibility towards the House of People. So collectively responsible to whom? Generally Lok Sabha, and individually responsible. That means all the ministers. So they will be individually responsible to the President of India. So the doctrine of pleasure comes into picture here, right? So doctrine of pleasure means any Council of Ministers along with the Prime Minister will hold their office only during they hold the doctrine of pleasure, or when they hold that particular pleasure in the President. So these are the main things you need to know. Then Article 78 also talks about the duties of the Prime Minister. right? So duties of the Prime Minister in relation to the President of India. So first duty is, whenever the Prime Minister generally holds any cabinet meeting, so all the decisions taken for in terms of legislative and administrative aspects have to be communicated to the President of India. And in any situation, if any of the member of the cabinet or the Council of Ministers doesn't agree to the cabinet decision, he also should show that confidence of that minister is taken, or the confidence of that particular ministry is taken and presented before the President of India. So because they swim together or sing together, right? Swim or sink. That means there is no individual liberty. They have to abide by the collective decision or they have to resign. Very important, right? Then let us understand who will administer the oath and salary. So once, if you see the oath of the Council of Ministers generally will be administered by the President of India, and the oath generally reads that they bear the true adherence to the Indian Constitution and they faithfully discharge their duties without any considerations. So this is the oath generally, and it will be administered by whom? By President of India, right? And the salary and other allowances will be decided by whom? By Parliament. And when you talk about the tenure, there is no fixed tenure. Generally, aspirants get confused here. There is no fixed 5-year tenure. So unless they enjoy the confidence of the Lok Sabha, they cannot hold the office. Only till then they can hold the office. That means anytime government may collapse. So there is no reserved 5-year term, but generally during the time when they hold the pleasure of president, they can hold this office. So here the tenure means unless they enjoy the pleasure of president. So these are the main things which you need to know. Then let us know about the responsibilities of Council of Ministers. So they will take part of policy making, right? So policy making and formulation. They also hold important duty of delegated legislation, because the legislation is the main job of Parliament, but due to its bulkiness and the lack of time and everything, so generally legislature is delegating the power to make laws to the executive, and here the cabinet is playing an important role. At the same time, they also play a major role during crisis management, and they also take effective policies, and they also have the responsibility of communicating everything to the House of People. So these are the main roles and responsibilities. But we have to understand the size of Council of Ministers was initially not capped by the Indian Constitution, but 91st Amendment in 2003 has made it mandatory that maximum size can be only 15% of the total strength of the Lok Sabha, right? So, and this is including the Prime Minister. So including the Prime Minister, maximum can be 15%. That will be the Council of Ministers size, among which most important ministries can form the cabinet. So cabinet is nothing but a body which is already part of Council of Ministers. So not all the ministers of the Council of Ministers will be of cabinet rank. There can be MOAs, there can be independent charge members also. Now, let us see the significance of Council of Ministers. So significance is, these are the real executives. So real executives, because they are actually participating and they are mainly responsible for aiding and advising the President of India. And here what is most important is, whatever they have given the advice, for them they are not legally responsible. So there is no legal responsibility. That is the main difference in the case of Indian and UK constitutions. In UK there is legal responsibility conferred on the ministers, but many a times Supreme Court has clearly said, and in the constitution also it was mentioned, there is no legal responsibility of the Council of Ministers for the advice they have given to the President of India. Right? Now I hope the concept is clear. And then how they are different from the cabinet is so clear. So cabinet is a small body which is integral part of the Council of Ministers, whereas Council of Ministers is a larger body which includes cabinet, MOAs, and the same time independent charge. So there will be super cabinet, kitchen cabinet, which is an informal group which generally comprises of the close aides to the Prime Minister, including his family members, friends and all, need not all the time be from the cabinet, right? So then let us see the practice question. Consider the following statements. Council of Ministers at the centre shall be collectively responsible to the Parliament. Union Ministers shall hold the office during the pleasure of President. Prime Minister shall communicate to the President about the proposals for legislation. Among these which you feel correct, let me know in the comment section. Then today, as part of the concept of the day, we have discussed about an interesting topic related to polity, that is the Council of Ministers and their difference with the cabinet and how they're different in roles and responsibilities. What is the provisions related to Council of Ministers and the cabinet in the Indian Constitution? What are the provisions related to their oath and salary and other things? So if you find this video useful, let me know in the comment section. Thanks for joining. See you again.